the digital vital stats, essentials of an effective measure of any digital strategy, where we're going to look at the subject of the CMO impression of impressions, the reach, and hashtag trending. How is a digital campaign measured, and can there be an all-encompassing common measurement metric? We're also going to look at how can one verify the efficacy of the data that the publishers themselves provide, of course defining ROI in terms of real versus notional, and the real story behind the hashtag trending, reach, and impressions. Well, this session is going to be chaired, ladies and gentlemen, by ex-SVP and Head of Brand Media, Digital, and Consumer Insights at Vodafone, who has launched her own strategic marketing consultancy now named Brand Eagle. The core proposition of the consultancy is brand transformation with business impact. Please help me welcome the founder and chief strategist, Brand Eagle Consulting, Ronita Mitra. And while Ronita makes her way to the stage, I'm going to call upon our panelists for this discussion. First up, we have Chief Integration Officer, South Asia, the Leo Burnett Group, Prashanth Challapalli. I'm also going to request the Managing Partner, Grey Space, and Partner, Firki Productions, Yateesh Srivastava, to please join us. We also have CEO and founder OneDrop, Jeffrey Dachis. And also joining us is the international social media speaker, trainer, and consultant, Zoe Cairns. I'd also like to invite our other panelists, Jeff Bullas, sir, if you may please join us. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, so after a long day, today hopefully we are going to end the day for all of you with a very animated discussion. After having an initial discussion with all of them, I can assure you that it's going to be one rich with perspectives and animated discussion with lots of wide perspectives is a guarantee pretty much. So what are we going to talk about today? I think everyone in this room knows about the rapid growth of the digital medium and the growth that's going on in this country. I mean, I don't want to throw numbers to this audience, but I was going through, if the Dentsu report, the Dentsu digital report was quoting numbers like a 6,300 crore industry with an expected CAGR of 37%, growing to about 27,000 crore by 2020. I mean, these are huge numbers. And what they indicate is that digital in this country is no longer an initiative or no longer plays a part of a plan where just some additional media monies are allocated towards digital, or where it's an afterthought. Digital in our country has very much become mainstream. It is very much a part, it is very much an important part of initiatives for many industries and for many brands. And for those that are still not there, I think they're getting there quite soon. So having become a mainstream medium, are we still seeing that digital is, just focused on individual aspects like content creation or a social media activity? Or is it all coming together in some form of a cohesive strategy and plan? Are we seeing digital in a way where it's not just execution of individual elements, but really kind of delivering to clearly set objectives and goals and part of a clearly defined strategy? And most importantly, is it just about activities and initiatives and execution? Or is it really about knowing how well it's working, how effective is it, and what kind of an impact is it having, which is all about the measurement, and which is where today's panel comes in. So what we are going to deliberate upon is the measurement aspect, and what we're going to focus upon and deliberate upon is the measurement aspect of digital activities and the digital medium. To begin with, the question that I'm going to ask is, let me point that to you, Prashanth. You know, in the whole digital spectrum, what metrics are we still looking at as an industry? Is it still at a level of impressions and reach, or have we as an industry moved beyond that?
I think we are looking at many very different metrics, but I think the problem with that is that we should be asking that question at the beginning of the campaign when the brief goes out, saying what do we really measure? Usually metrics are used as a postmortem to see how well the campaign is done, but I think the question to be asked is, as an agency and as a client, you need to sit across the table and define success for your campaign. Am I going to decide this based on, so broadly dividing metrics into engagement-based metrics and performance-based metrics. Engagement is used usually to, you know, do things like awareness and brand building and stuff like that. Engagement is more performance-driven. So different metrics are used, and we all know that. But the question is, when you look at engagement metrics, very rarely is an agency and a client sitting across the table and saying, how do we define what metrics are we going to measure and say, if we hit this, this is a successful campaign, right? Usually it is left to the media agency who are told, you know, we have X amount of money to spend, so deliver the best that you can. So you get a video out there and you deliver 5 million views, everybody's happy. But the question here is, I would also like to ask platforms like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram, where so much money is being spent, to start defining what does a successful campaign look like across categories, right? I think we are measuring a lot of different metrics, but I don't think we are measuring, or we're not trying to understand exactly what defines success. We are leaving it as a postmortem, and also we are not using the learnings from one campaign to inform the next campaign that you do.
Oh, that's a scary one.
Yeah, from a metrics perspective, this has worked. You could say these 4 people have tweeted out or shared this video and it has worked really well. How are we going to use them or target them in the next campaign? I don't think we do micro-level detailing like that. We're very happy with the large, big numbers and charts because it makes everybody happy.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up on 2 points, and one I'll touch upon later, which was about the 2 sets of metrics for, you know, building campaigns, and the other one for engagement. But before that, you know, I'm going to touch upon the other point right now, which is about this whole clarity of setting objectives and how a digital plan is not just about execution of elements, but really about, you know, starting with the clarity of setting objectives and then, you know, funneling into, dovetailing into a coherent strategy and then the execution. So can I ask one of the panelists, maybe Zoe, to actually pick up on that, and then, you know, the others can build on it and add to it.
Of course, well, I'm coming from the social media aspect of it, in terms of that when someone comes to me to create the campaign, you know, I say to them, what is it that you actually want to achieve? Because your results rely on having a really good objective and goal. Otherwise, if you don't have an objective and goal, then how do you know what you're going to measure? How do you know what results you actually want to achieve? And, you know, I agree with Prashanth there, where he's mentioned about, you know, what do you want the campaign to actually look like? What results do you actually want to achieve? And it's actually setting those expectations before you actually put the campaign in place and looking what an ideal campaign would actually look like with that success. So it's about having really good goals and objectives and making sure they align, number 1, with the business goals, but number 2, with what you're trying to achieve, whether it's about awareness, whether it's about engagement. What is the whole campaign about? What are we trying to achieve? Then that ultimately gives what we need to measure, which will give the results.
So do you find that most brands are following this process? I mean, where do most of the brands fall? I mean, do they fall on the side of having that clarity, or are they on the side of...
Yes, many of the brands that I work with, I'd say about 40–45% only really want brand awareness. They're not too worried about, well, I shouldn't really say this, but the digital marketers within the company just say, we just want to get as much reach as we can. However, with regards to smaller to medium-sized businesses that I work with, they haven't got, you know, repeat budget over and over to then keep doing campaigns over and over again. So we have to make sure that the budget that we do have achieves the results that they really want to achieve. So therefore, we need to make sure that their goals and objectives and their expectations are set at the outset.
Okay, interesting. Jeffrey, Jeff, would you all like to add to that?
What I'm hearing a lot about metrics, it's all about campaign driven. I think there's another conversation we need to have, because I believe today we should be doing continuous marketing. And that is a different scenario. And we are so taught as brand marketers, I believe, looking from the outside in. I don't come from a brand agency background. I really think we really need to be looking at continuous marketing. And that's a completely different metric to campaign marketing. Continuous marketing is, okay, is my website traffic going up or down? Am I turning that traffic into leads? Am I turning that into sales? How many inbound links am I generating from my content to actually improve my SEO and build Google and search engine authority? So my experience is much more in continuous marketing, because the search engines and social media hate silence. So there's two parts to marketing in terms of what we're trying to achieve: continuing to build that asset, continuous marketing, and then on the other hand, and get an ROI from that as well, and the other one's campaign. And I very rarely hear about the term continuous marketing, because it's big brands do campaign marketing, but a lot of them don't do SEO. In other words, they're all after that big bang result from one campaign, and they're forgetting that it's a long game.
And just adding from that, you know, they go out, they do the campaigns, they get all the engagement and the awareness, and then the campaign then stops, and then when they have to then re-go and do another campaign, it's about building up the momentum and the engagement again with their audience, warming them back up again, and it's just twice as hard.
So, you know, I think that's where we now need to address issues around execution, therefore. What are the challenges that we are facing in the execution and the measurement-related aspects of execution when it comes to the campaign? Is it all really hunky-dory? I mean, all the inventory that you buy, is it really getting served? Is it all, you know, the kind of the quality of inventory that you actually want to achieve as a brand? Is it all reaching to the right target audience? So what are some of these challenges that we are facing? Jeffrey, Yateesh, Jeffrey, would you like to pick up on that one?
Sure.
You could add to that, yeah.
So the idea around measurement sort of is predicated by the thought that, of course, you're executing flawlessly, and then you're measuring how well your flawless execution is performing. What measurement doesn't lie, right? So oftentimes it tells you that your campaign or your efforts, you know, didn't perform well. But was it the digital media or the tools or the technology that didn't perform well? Was it the platform that didn't perform well? Or was it the planning, execution, and goals that didn't perform well? And so I think there's a lot of challenges around deploying, you know, digital the right way and doing it effectively, and then measuring the outcome of that effectiveness versus doing it poorly and then blaming the poor performance on the fact that digital is, you know, new tech or something like that. I think there are also a ton of challenges related to fraud in the ad world. We don't really know where the ads are going. Click bots, fake publishers, and
click farms.
Yeah, and so you know, there's a lot of questions in the digital ad business, and I'll separate digital ad business from digital marketing or performance marketing. And so digital advertising and publishing and providing display ads on a reach and frequency basis has a whole different set of metrics and ideas and execution problems that are different than continuous marketing, performance marketing, and the digital marketing that we're talking about, where performance in the end is the metric. Did it sell? Did you convert? Did you create commerce that you can measure? And I think those two things are separate.
What about frauds and you know, the quality of inventory? Would you like to elaborate on that a little more?
Sure. I think for digital advertisers on the brand building side, if you're spending money buying impressions, you know, some of the numbers that are quoted, but it's upwards of 50% of the inventory you're purchasing is served fraudulently or is not reaching the intended audience, whether it's through pixel placing or through pop-ups and pop-unders or videos that are playing in places that the user's not seeing them, or digital display ads popping, showing inventory where on a page that you're not actually on. All of that inventory, in essence, is fraudulent, and you're paying for it if you're buying ads on digital properties via reach and frequency. And I think there's challenges with the DSP platforms, the buy-side and sell-side programmatic plays that are, placing billions of impressions out there. You just don't know what you're getting or when you're getting it or how well it's performing. And so I think that's a massive challenge for digital advertising and brand builders buying reach and frequency, which is not the same problems that occur in continuous marketing and performance marketing because it's much easier to track.
Sure. Yateesh, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, Ronita, I want to pick up on a couple of points. I think, one point about objectives. And I think it all boils down to the fact that very often, when you put down an objective, you're actually putting your neck on the block, right? And it's very easy at times to make the metrics fit your objectives later, then have the objectives and see whether your metrics have delivered to them or not, right? So sometimes there's a bit of a post-fit that happens, and so the objective shape shifts in a way, right? Which makes measurement actually pretty much redundant because you're measuring what you want to measure and not what you were supposed to have done. So that's one point I want to add to what Zoe said on this thing, on objectives. The other point really that you touched upon was that are we executing flawlessly? And I think, Jeff made that point really well. To me, the only analogy is that, most of us as marketers, we are conditioned to throwing 3 or 4 big rocks into a river and seeing big splashes, right? Those are our 4 campaigns for the year. And continuous marketing is about sitting on the side of the river and throwing pebbles and creating ripples and making sure that some of those ripples work for you and measuring which ones work for you, discarding the ones that don't, right? And then going on forward and building on that. That's what it's all. I think that's a huge difference. I just want to kind of build on Jeffrey's point on fraud. I work with somebody as an associate, and we just tracked some of the campaigns for an insurance company and a bank on impressions and reach, 9% to 14% certified clear-cut fraud, 23 to 27%.
What was that number again?
9 to 14 clear-cut fraud, 23 to 27% suspicious, right? So you're talking about almost 40% of the inventory, and these are live cases. I'm not building these out of the top of my head. This is something that we've just done. Surprised the hell out of the client, obviously, and that's the point. Is that fraud is going to become a greater part of our life. Today it's down onto display advertising, as we call it, but I'm beginning to see it happening. Lead stuffing is happening. Cookie stuffing is happening, which basically means, people are taking attribution fraudulently for something that they've never even done. They're not even part of the campaign, but because they've stuffed a cookie down my browser, and at some point in time I go and buy your product, ooh, it's my save, right? So that sort of stuff is happening, and I think, so when we talk about measurement, I think, all of these are issues really in terms of saying we have shape-shifting objectives. We are used to throwing big rocks. And the last point I want to make is that I've seen it, and I'm personally was guilty of it as a marketer at a point in time, is that we always think television first when we think campaign. And then we try and adapt that across various media. And digital for us is still to an extent a medium, right? And we don't look at it as a point where we need to differentiate ourselves, and we need to, really put our necks on the block and really have objectives out there which can be measured sensibly.
Jeff, Jeffrey, and Zoe, what is your experience about this television-first approach in the rest of the world, in the world outside of India, in the developed markets? Is it still a television? Digital, of course, is a lot bigger in the developed countries than it is in India. But is it still a television-first approach? And how do you then measure? Do you have a common set of metrics which brings together the impact of television, print, and digital?
I'll just say, I think a television-first approach is a lazy marketer's way of approaching things. It's easy to say, oh, the creatives went off and made the 4 campaigns. We've got the assets. Now let's push the assets into digital. Digital is a secondary medium. You measure it the same way. How many plays or how many impressions did you deliver? And I just think that that's not really exercising the full muscle that digital offers.
Yep.
And so I'm sure Jeff can add to this, but when you start factoring in, email, social, advocacy, influencer, digital display, paid search, SEO, SEM, and all the different tactics that digital has to drive meaningful engagement and commerce interactions, and then you just decide to throw up a video ad on YouTube, I just think it's lazy.
Yeah. I think big brands have lazy budgets because they can afford to. Yeah, lots of revenue, billions of dollars. So, but a small to medium brand, you don't have that luxury. Okay, you've really got to make those dollars work hard for you. And I remember hearing an advertising agency recently describe how they ran this fantastic campaign for an automotive campaign. It was incredible creative. It was a work of art. 100 million views on YouTube. But at the end of it, they said that they ran a survey and 55% of people said they'd be more inclined to buy that truck. They couldn't say they'd sold one truck out of those vanity metrics. So television's great, and I think we're moving from art to art and science, and I think that's a real challenge for digital marketers and marketers, is to get the art and the science singing together.
I'd just like to take up that point that you mentioned about it's not just art and it's art and science. Because where it impacts agencies is that the agencies which are creating the work and the agencies which are responsible for distributing it are very different agencies, right? The creative agency does your TVC, your media agency is releasing it. The digital creative agency is doing your banners and your Facebook posts or your digital video. And the digital media agency is releasing it. Somebody else is handling SEO, somebody else is handling SEM. A 7th player is handling influencer marketing and advocacy. And it's easy when a campaign succeeds for everybody to celebrate and, hey, let's have a drink and we've done well. But in a lot of cases, what happens is that 3 or 4 of these channels work, a couple of them don't work. And the channels which don't work don't get questioned because overall the campaign is success. But when it fails, everybody's busy pointing the finger at somebody else. And what happens with the creative agencies is they're sitting down and saying, what the hell just happened? Our work was great, the client loved it, how did the campaign not work? Because nobody's coming back to the creative agency and saying, these particular things didn't deliver, right? So going back to that, I don't think we can afford to now anymore differentiate, these are the creators and these are the distributors of the work, because everybody needs to learn from it. And I think that has to come from the clients, it has to come from the platforms that the work is being put up, because otherwise it's just going to be money being thrown and not knowing what is happening with it.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is education. And one of them in terms of educating clients. And I'll use an analogy. The client wants to see results of some type, right? And it's the sexy ones like the views, you can see those. For the CEO, it might be look at the ad I ran, On the other hand, a friend of mine used to be a crop dusting pilot. So he used to fly very dangerous, low runs over airfields. The farmer would be watching him do the run. The optimum height for actually doing the run is 10 feet. But the farmer thinks he's not doing his job because he's not low enough. Because if he flies too low, the vortex doesn't distribute the chemical properly. So what happens as a pilot, he flies low to keep the client happy. And that's the really interesting tension that you've got to do with your client, is you've got to deliver, but you also got to give the impression that you're delivering. And I think that's a real challenge in this digital world.
Yeah, so that's about, being clever about how you manage your campaign delivery then. So diplomacy and cleverness at work over there.
I think it's interesting when Facebook first emerged with an ad platform, there wasn't any ads on Facebook originally, and then when they started to emerge as an ad platform, everybody, we were one of the first, Facebook, preferred providers, and you had this opportunity to create this micro-targeting and really find out what people are interested in and bring them into your virtuous closed ecosystem of engagement and commerce. And what happened was that no advertisers and no marketers really wanted to take advantage of those same kinds of tools. Nobody was capable of doing it. The advertisers wanted to place ads. They didn't want to actually market. They didn't want to actually engage with their consumers. They wanted to just place ads. So what did Facebook do? They scrapped all the engagement platforms. They scrapped every bit of engagement that you can do in Facebook and created ad units. And now what you see on Facebook is ad units. And you can buy ad units in all different flavors. And they maybe have a little bit of engagement capability to them. Why? Because it's easier for marketers who are lazy to buy them. And what we need to see is marketers who want to get in there and do the work and utilize the tools and then reap the benefits.
So therefore, what you're clearly saying is that there is a big opportunity loss in the way the whole ecosystem is operating.
That's
because
right.
on the one hand, from what Prashanth is saying, there is this whole fragmented ecosystem. And on the other hand, from what you're saying, there is this thing of managing the client's understanding level, and therefore, and in some cases limited, because technology is moving at a faster pace than marketeers can keep pace with. And in that sense, the delivery platforms actually not doing full justice to the power of the medium, but really managing what the client can understand. Yeah. So there is I'm seeing a huge opportunity loss over there then.
Yeah, but I think, Ronita, the other point is, and this is what most of us forget at a point in time as marketers, is that the internet is all about choice, right? The reason I come there is of my own choosing. What I see is of my own choosing, right? And hence, the traditional advertising model to me, right, is actually dead on the internet, right? And I think, Jeff, you and I were having a discussion about that. I think the traditional advertising model is completely dead. I do not go onto my browser to watch a display ad under any circumstances. The worst thing that you can do is throw that big interstitial into my face. I mean, say, I just want to smash my screen, but it's too expensive to replace. But the whole point of that is, and all of us are now becoming smarter with our ad blockers, et cetera, et cetera. But what we're talking about is that the digital engagement platform, I wouldn't even call it advertising, I call it digital engagement, has to happen through content and not through advertising. It's a very, very different ballgame, right? And I think the whole point is that marketers are still not willing to be the people who move from being advertisers with easy-to-buy units. I can buy 50 spots on this program. I can buy 500 ad units on Facebook. I can run 5 videos on YouTube, X, Y, and Z. That's the way the metric is in their mind, right? To be a publisher requires you to have a very different sense of what you want to do, right? And I don't think marketers are as yet willing to become or transition themselves into being publishers. So till then, I think we'll keep doing crop dusting by flying low because it looks good.
So, I think it's also down to what Jeff said in regards to education, because when I go into brands and you talk to the brand and the communications and the marketing directors in there, they're looking for an easy way in which to get their message across. So they're looking at advertising. Whereas if they started educating themselves in the latest news about algorithms and how they can start harnessing the power of algorithms and creating content, in tweaking content to get onto the timelines and making the algorithms work for them and not letting them take control, then they wouldn't have to go down the advertising route anyway.
Yeah, I was chatting with a friend of mine last week, and he does a lot of digital optimizing, like optimizing and building sites to increase your search engine traffic. He does Facebook advertising as well. What he's found maybe one of the best ways is actually to give clients obvious results is to run 2 things at the same time. Because if you work on search engine optimization, you don't see anything happening for months and months. And the client starts to get nervous, right? So what he does, in parallel, he runs Facebook ads. So performance is happening in like instant gratification. That keeps the client happy. Then on the other hand, the search engine optimization, the website building out, the link structure, the link building is going on. So we've got to think of, and this is part of the education program that we have to take our clients through. And I remember I used to sell websites, and clients would come and suck our brains for hours. I finally said, you're not sucking our brains anymore, we're going to charge you for workshops. So you just got to work out a way to educate and still make money.
Fair point. But you know, that's what Google always told us, and that's how Google always got us to spend on SEM, because the pitch was that spend on SEM and it drives the awareness, and you know, once the awareness builds up, the SEO is going to start picking up, and that's how, you know, they got us to spend money on SEM. So,
It's one system.
yes, absolutely.
That's true until they change the algorithm, you know, one day and then you have to now redo it again.
You've always got the battle of the algorithms.
Okay, so I'm going to now pick up on the point that you know, many of you have been mentioning about continuous marketing, performance marketing, you know, whether it's digital following, digital being a cut-paste model of television content very often, or not thinking television first. So I really see two kinds of applications of the whole digital spectrum. One is in the area of brand building, which is a classic funnel of marketing, you know, going through, following the customer journey through awareness to consideration to purchase and loyalty, versus the other application around performance and, you know, actually driving business and driving revenues. Do you all see, and I'm really leaving it open to the floor, do you see the two collapsing now, or do you still see them as different initiatives on the digital platform? You know, at the end of the day, the channels through which content is getting delivered are the same for both sets of activities, whether it's video or search or social or display. So how do you see the whole digital platform managing these two very different sets of activities? Is there a challenge?
I have a slightly different point of view on this. When you talk about engagement, right, and usually you want to spend some amount of money creating a digital video or a bunch of digital videos, and you're putting it out on Facebook, Twitter, and you're creating content basically, and it costs money. It doesn't cost as much money to do your banners and your emailers and all that, right? However, what the practice is that you will not question the performance of your engagement content, but you're questioning the performance of your performance content. If you're going to spend so much money on engagement, why should it not deliver on performance, right? I see these worlds, somewhere they have to converge, because the more we're talking about all of this, right? It's a lot of money being thrown in, and you're not measuring it right. You don't know what's happening to that money. I think eventually every piece of work that you put out there, whether you want to call it engagement or you want to call it performance, I think every piece of content has to deliver. And I think this goes back to the first point that we were talking about. How are you going to define success for your campaign? If you produce a brilliant video and it's got 2 million views and it's been shared, why don't you have a call to action? If people have loved the video so much, why aren't you asking them to take one more action? And you're not asking them to become a circus performer. You're saying, you've clicked, watch the video, click here, go there, buy me, or whatever else is the call to action. I don't think we're doing enough of that. I think we've
look at it as end-to-end.
Yeah, because we're treating digital content like television content. We still make the 16:9 digital videos. We don't do vertical videos. Our narrative and the script writing is left to right or right to left, which is how plays used to be written, right? Exit right, exit left. It's the same formula which is being used. Why can't the video start, something happens at the top and then flows to the bottom, because that's how you scroll. I don't think we are using it right.
Yateesh, do you have any experience on that front, considering that you're with a content, you're in the content business now?
Well, that's the hardest business to sell at the moment, right? So we'll not even talk about that. But I think, I have a slightly different point of view between performance and engagement, right? I think if you're not selling, you're basically BSing yourself, right? That's the, and you're not doing anybody any favors, because that is really underutilizing the medium like nothing is, right? If you say, oh, I've just done this, to me, if you're talking about metrics, you're talking about measurement, and you're talking about digital, then the only metric that makes sense is how much money you're putting out to acquire a customer, right? It doesn't matter if you can get it common across. You could kind of pool in all your money, pool in all your new acquisitions, start doing a simple, division that anybody in grade 3 can do. And if it's going up, good for you. If it's not, you're in deep trouble, right? So to me, that's the only metric that really works. I think that this whole, there's a little bit of, smoke and mirrors that, oh, this is, engagement stuff and this is performance stuff. And I think that's really kind of queering the pitch in a way, because at the end of the day, all marketing is done, it's not an ego thing. You're marketing to sell. There's no, whether it's a product, service, anything that you're doing, you're marketing to sell, right? And here's the great opportunity for you to actually, as Prashanth said, close that loop in a way that was never possible before, right? You talked about customer journey. The customer journey is like random Brownian movement today, right? I move from a mobile phone to a device, to a different device. I walk into a store. Everybody is trying to now track all of that and make some sense of it. But right now it's looking like a dog's breakfast at the end of the day. Nobody can really kind of get into what you want to do with that stuff. So at the end of the day, to me, the most simple metric is the number of customers that you've spent your money for. As simple as that. I think, you could talk about any other metric, that's fine. Some of them are vanity metrics like views that, you've got 5 million views, 1 customer, good for you. I mean, say, I'd rather have 5 views and 5 customers, and I'm good at that, really.
Okay, so I'll come to this point about ROI. But before that, I just want to touch upon one point around, you hear about so many tools being available for measurement. And I mean, as a marketer, I have had the whole ecosystem coming and talking, selling so many tools, and this tool measures this, and this tool measures that. So what is happening today? Are the measurements following the tools, or are the tools following the measurement? So are tools being created to address the needs of the platform and customers and the needs of measurement? Or is it that the tools are being created and we are actually designing the measurement to only fit into what the tools are designed, what the tools have been designed for?
I think that it's super important for us to think about the tools that are available to measure stuff as having the ability to drive actionable insights. So if you're not getting insights out of your data or out of your tools or out of your analysis that's actionable, then you're missing, a whole layer of perspective. And that actionable insight is really only there to help you drive action so that you can formulate a strategy and a set of tactics that's data-driven as opposed to random. And so the tools should support the strategy and the tactics. I said, I'm developing this strategy, and it's a video strategy, and we've determined that it's the right one. So I need video measurement tools. Or I'm doing a continuous performance marketing environment, and HubSpot is a great tool, or whatever it may be. But the point being that the tools should support the ability to give you insights onto your actions, which is rooted in your objectives, strategy, and tactics. And if you just have tools and then you're fitting your strategy and tactics into the tools that you have, then you're missing the point. If the tools are driving the discussion, I think you're missing the point.
And what's the reality around that? I mean, what's the kind of discussion that we typically find? I mean, are the discussions led by the measurement requirements, or are the discussions typically led by what tools are available?
It's normally the other way around. The number of conversations I've had where people say, I've got all these tools and all of these reports, and I say to them, well, which measurement is actually important to your objectives and your goals? And 9 times out of 10, you've got scales of where all the tools weigh the more, and there's no strategy in place. And then you have to say, right, what are you trying to achieve? What are your initial objectives with this campaign or with this continuous performance? I'm getting used to that word now. In terms of that, you then know what you want to achieve, what tools you need to use, and what are part of the toolbox for when you're running that campaign or when you're doing that marketing.
Sure.
I think given the complexity of marketing today, because there's so many different things you need to do to actually sell a product. 15 years back, it was you put a television commercial out, your product sell. But now, SEM, SEO, all of this, right? I think fundamentally this question about tools and all that, if you take a couple of steps back, if you know the right questions to ask as a marketer, right? And very often it's like data, right? Data has many answers. you need to know what is the right question to ask so that it gives you the right answer for you. One, if you're somebody who knows all the right questions to ask, I think it's fair to say, give us a proper brief. Give us a detailed brief because you know what the questions are. If you don't know what the right questions are, just define the problem. Let your communication partners come back to you with a solution. The solution could be data-led, it could be a video strategy, it could be, I think the same question appeals to tools. There are many of them out there. If you want more, people will create more. But as long as you don't know what are the right things you're looking for, you will not know which tools to evaluate. So people will always build more tools because people are always buying it, right? So I think it's a chicken and egg situation.
Sure. Okay. Now, coming to the point that you raised, and one that's always a burning topic, and in some and in some contexts gets used a little loosely, actually, about ROI. And is that really this is really open to all. But Jeff, maybe you can throw some light on how important is ROI really as a metric? How useful is it? Is it a be-all and end-all? How comprehensive is it?
ROI is the end goal, end of story. And I think, and I was in this bucket as a social media, writer and blogger and writing about the industry. And when we all got into the industry, we're all excited by terms like fluffy things like, oh, he's got lovely engagement. And they're well and good, and it builds trust and credibility. But if that's all there is, you're leaving all your money on the table. And it was, I think I might have mentioned this morning in the talk, but I met some hard-nosed digital marketers that came out and inspired by the direct mail industry of the 70s and 80s and 90s. These guys know how to get ROI. And they will use all the latest tools to get it, like Facebook Messenger, to convert that attention into a sale. They'll use Facebook Live even to make a call to action during the Facebook Live where they're educating. So ROI is it. And I think that a lot of social media marketers and a lot still are stuck in fluffy vanity metrics. And it's time for us to grow up as marketers, especially as social media marketers and as content marketers. And I realised 2 years ago I had that aha moment. I was just fluffing around with the first bottom, the top of the funnel stuff, and it wasn't producing an ROI.
Yeah. No, I agree with that with Jeff. In terms of, I was one of those fluffy social media marketers in terms of looking at vanity metrics, but it all comes down to, it's making sure that you do have a sales funnel, most importantly, converting engagement into clients, but also having a really clear call to action when you're having that engagement with them, to get the ROI.
There's a larger issue around ROI, right? So when ROI became a term that could be used and thrown around in meetings, and I think in India this happened about 5 years back, the classical question that we would have faced as an agency in every meeting was, so what's the ROI? This is the client asking the agency. After a point we realized we don't know. So we started asking the client back, why don't you tell us what's your ROI? Then either you let me define the ROI and then let me run the campaign, don't get into approvals because you're leaving the job to us. Or you tell me what your ROI is. So therefore you're saying, I'm defining the problem, this is how much money I'm going to spend on it, and this is what I want in return. We will come back then to you with a campaign which matches or delivers on that ROI. I don't think we ask that question enough. We leave it out in the open space because we're too scared to ask, right? And again, this boils down to, okay, I'll do that.
It's accountability then.
It's accountability and also because of this fragmentation that we've had between the creative piece and the media piece, the creative agency will never be able to give you that ROI because they'll say, but we don't know how to deliver on ROI. We'll only give you great looking stuff. So I think it's a joint responsibility. You need to get the media guys, you need to get your creative agency, sit them down and say, this is my brand, both of you are responsible for it, answer this ROI question together. And let's not sort of say, you guys are responsible for great looking stuff and you guys are responsible for delivering on optimization.
So it's a team that delivers the ROI then.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, on the publishing side or on the media side, you're not seeing publishers being held responsible for delivering what in essence is the mechanism to deliver ROI. So if you have fluffy ROI, fluffy metrics on one side, and then you have media pricing their media with no accountability, you've got a big, huge mismatch in the marketplace where no one's accountable to the person who's spending the money for the end result, which is the sale.
Yateesh?
Yeah, I think, Ronita, you know, it's like standing at a well and just throwing your money into it at a point in time, right? If you're not going to be ROI focused, I mean, say, you might as well just do that, right? So I agree completely with everybody else that ROI is it. Now, I think the point, it all stitches together from where we started to say that ROI is totally dependent on the objectives of what you want to achieve, right? And I would always say that if the objectives are very fluffy, to say that I want so many views or so many impressions or so many likes, then the client really has no right to ask you for an ROI, because if you deliver that, then you've delivered him what you promised, right? So to me, the promise of an ROI between an agency and a client is the contract of what you want delivered, right? Within a budget that you want it delivered in, right? And I'm saying this from both sides of it, looking at it from a marketer as well as this. If I, as a marketer, am not able to define very specific actionables on what I want to do, whether it's continuous or campaign, right? Then I deserve the metrics I get, very, very frankly, right? And at the end of the day, I think the point is it's again about going to be educating to say that ROI is about the action that a person takes, which leads to commerce, which, you know, leads somewhere towards a finite action that makes you more profitable from a sales perspective, no matter what you're selling, right? Whether you're selling services, whether you're selling products, whatever you're doing. So to me, ROI is it, right? And right now we get away with a lot of fluffy definitions of ROI itself, right? Because you can move ROI up the funnel and say I delivered 100,000 impressions and, well, that's it, good enough. But that, to me, that doesn't work. To me, the actual ROI is where the rubber hits the road, where the person your customer puts down money for whatever he's supposed to be putting money down for.
So I have a quick question on that. How many agency people here are in the room? A few. And how many client-side people are in the room? About the same. How many agency people here would be willing to bet their fees in a shared outcomes in situation where they only got paid when they delivered the outcome? Any agency people raise their hand? Yeah, 10%. So, and how many clients in the room would be willing to only pay, not fee for service, not fee for media impressions, but only fee for outcome? Only a few. Interesting.
Interesting. I
So,
thought
right?
I thought all the hands would go
Right.
up.
All hands.
So I think there's an interesting dynamic here when agencies are getting paid in a fee-for-service environment, or getting paid as a commission on top of media sales. There's literally no accountability for the end result of the spend, and that's a huge disconnect. It's a huge inefficiency, and it's in the end going to get wringed out of the market by technology.
That's sort of affiliate marketing.
Yeah.
It's a type of affiliate marketing. And we do some affiliate marketing, and we recommend top-line online courses, and we collaborate. And because you can measure it. And we share revenue. So it's really fascinating, because you can measure digital so much better than the old model. And that's where it gets interesting.
Wonderful. You know, so to me, yeah, but to me, sorry, I'm just playing a devil's advocate, because to me, ROI, and as a marketer, to me, ROI would be, yes, it's very important, but it is for that one campaign. But, you know, if I'm trying to build performance, and if I'm trying to not just acquire customers, but retain them over a period of time, how do you measure customer lifetime value on the digital medium? Is that possible, and is anybody doing that? So it's not just about acquisition and how much this campaign helped me and how efficiently, at what cost did it help me acquire customers, and therefore made this particular campaign effective. But it's about taking it to the next level, about the long-term relationship with the customer, and how, you know, how valuable is that customer to me as a business from a long-term perspective. Anybody, actually.
Your lifetime value is where you can, just by selling a product for $100 instead of $50, getting it for 3 years instead of 1.5 years, you can quadruple your revenue. In other words, you basically, the lifetime value of the customer is up, It's optimising every part of that equation, and that's where online stores really, the really good operators with online stores, e-commerce, that's what they do really, really well, the good operators.
In subscription businesses like mobile phones, LTV and CAC are core metrics and core drivers. CAC, LTV, churn, those are all the things that you focus on, and so it's easy to measure what the LTV of a customer is. In a one-time purchase like an automobile or a television or something like that, it ends up building, LTV ends up getting built off of brand value, and then what's the most NPS scores or the likelihood to repurchase really ends up being where you end up. I bought a Samsung TV. Would I buy another Samsung TV? And how many TVs can I get sold over what period of time? And I don't know if marketers really get engaged in that discussion in the same way subscription marketers do.
Right. So, okay, so on that note, I think we're done with our questions. Is there any other point that I'm done with questions that I had for the panel? My request is to the panel members, if there's any additional point that anybody would like to make, and then we're going to...
I'd just like to add to what Jeffrey said. I think that the answers will be different depending on who you ask. If you ask an automotive client or you ask a BFSI client, he would have far more concrete answers to lifetime customer value, because the idea is to upsell and cross-sell and to retain the consumer. If you ask somebody who sells soap, you'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right? The difference also is if you ask marketers based in the West, because data is very rich. A lot of rich data is available in the US, right, or in Europe. If you ask this question in India, most people will not have an answer because we don't have those rich sources of data. We are still very, very data poor. Right? You talk to any CMO, they will tell you the same thing. When you look at publishers, when you look at e-commerce sites, they will not even tell you where the customer is landing from on the page that you've put up on their site. They will not tell you what is the consumer behavior on an e-commerce platform for your brands. Either they don't have the data or they will not share it. And I'm not saying at an individual level, obviously privacy issues are there. Data is a huge problem in India. The day that problem gets sorted, and that will have to come from agencies investing in that data, clients investing in buying that data, and then putting a tool or a process together for the data to make sense for you. So I think it depends on who you're asking that question.
Just a quick last point, and I think, it might get a little fuzzy at this point in time, but my whole point is that, it's going back to the point of tools. And I think most marketers, whether they're subscription marketers on the telecom, banking, financial services side, they have access to all the tools. But I just think that the use of those tools is highly lazy, right? I know that my customer experience with my bank is, rapidly plummeting downwards. I think their technology investments on customer-facing tools must have gone up 10x, and my customer experience is like 1 upon 10x at this point in time, right? Because despite all these tools, they just don't seem to know me. And I think you've got to move, the whole point of digital marketing is about knowing the customer, right? That was the first basis of the Facebook engagement platforms that they created, which they swapped for the ad boxes, was that how much you would be knowing about the person that you're marketing to. I think they don't even know their own customers, so lifetime value is a really long way away, right?
So, no, thanks for that. So I think that also brings us back to the point that Jeff had made about lazy marketers and the whole lazy ecosystem, and how, campaigns are fitted to deliver to what the client would be able to accept, and not taking it beyond, not really taking it to a level of first principles and a very fundamental level in terms of what really is required. So I'm conscious of the time over here, and on that note, I think there, at least I would say that there's been a lot of food for thought and a lot of points for us to really keep in mind and ponder upon as we go back to our day jobs and, continue working on our, campaigns going forward. We need to keep in mind things like we need to be quite brutal now going forward about having clarity around the objectives, and not necessarily and not really continuing the practice of, I'm sure, all are not doing that, but if there is a practice of retrofitting results and measurements with objectives, we definitely need to be very wary of that and work towards, working on a first principles model, start with the objective, have a coherent strategy, and then be honest about whether the measurements are really delivering towards the objective set or no. the point about having the whole ecosystem coming together, not in a fragmented way, but coming together as one team, one unit to address this whole spectrum from objective to strategy to measurement. I think a lot of interesting points about lazy marketers, lazy advertisers, not doing full justice to the power of what the campaign can deliver, but just trying to manage expectations and the understanding levels of the person sitting on the other side of the table. Move from that to bring full honesty and integrity to what the power of the medium really is, and harness it and leverage it to its fullest potential. And having a meaningful way of using tools, where tools actually deliver actionable insights, and not just use tools in a mechanical way, and definitely not use tools in a way that helps you read measurement in a way, measurement and metrics in a manner that's just convenient to you. So I think lots of things that we need to be, lots of areas that we can be cognizant of and go back to with making our digital initiatives a lot more hard-hitting, a lot more potential over there, a lot more sharp, and a lot more effective. So thanks very much for that, and thanks for the diverse perspectives and points of view coming from everyone on this panel. So thank you very much, everyone. Questions now from the audience?
Well, due to the paucity of time, we just have 2 minutes. We could probably take one question, if any. I think we don't have any questions. So, Ronita, thank you very much.
Power of the panel there.
I'm going to request Donna Moritz to kindly join me on stage and present mementos to our panel and our chairperson. Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Donna. Thank you very much.